Following that weather, a lot of attention has been over the hole which was knocked into the wall at Glen Road. It's understood that Manx Utilities had knocked the hole into the wall to allow a digger access to rebuild a weir. But the hole has now allowed a significant amount of water to stream out, causing all that flooding. Well, Alex Allinson, the chair of Manx Utilities, joins me in the studio now. Good morning. Well, are Manx Utilities responsible for the severity of the floods that we saw in Laxey yesterday?
Well, first of all, I think all of our hearts go out for the people who were affected by the flooding, and also our admiration for all the emergency services. This was a major incident yesterday. I know that the police, fire brigade, Coast Guard, civil defence were down there along with a lot of volunteers. And I think it was their prompt action that actually saved lives, because this was a significant event. Coming down to your question, was all this down to Manx Utilities? The answer is no. This was an exceptional flood. It caused a big build-up of trees that came down the river, which created a dam, and then the flood waters built up. Now, you're quite right, we did have a hole in the river wall that was put there deliberately to get a digger down to repair a weir. And when we got the yellow weather warning, all the apparatus was removed from that area that we could. The digger was left there, and that hole in the wall was shored up and was reinforced with some cladding. We were expecting 20 to 30 millimetres of rain. We got over 100 in Laxey, far more than anyone expected. And that washed away those defences, washed away everything that we were doing on that weir, and caused extra flooding. So
when was the hole actually made then?
It was made a couple of weeks ago. This is routine work on the weir. And one of the constraints in Laxey is that any work on the riverbank can only happen in July, August and September. And actually this work was slightly delayed by bad weather previously in the last couple of weeks, and was coming to a conclusion. We've done this before in terms of taking diggers down to the riverbank, and the idea of this work was to remove gravel, shore up that weir, and that weir actually reinforces both riverbanks. But unfortunately, it added to the problem. I don't think it was the main contributor, but it added to the problem. If you go down there, you can see that further down the road, most of the wall has actually fallen away because of the way the water dammed back and caused extra pressure, and then broke the banks and flooded all those houses.
As an area then of such high risk, I mean, in the past we've seen it, of course, as we've been saying, Laxey been hit by severe floods already. As an area which has undergone such traumatic weather beating in the past, should there not be more mitigation from when you're preparing to undertake any work like this, so that you are more than prepared for anything that the weather might throw at you?
Absolutely, and those preparations were built into the contracts. They were built into the planning of this. Unfortunately, the water that came down yesterday was above everyone's expectation. It took everyone by surprise. You just have to look at some of the scenes of an entire fire engine being, transported by the water. It was that fierce. And so anything that we could put up to mitigate wasn't enough, to be honest.
But that was due to the hole. That stream of water like that wouldn't have been there had the hole not been in the wall.
The wall was breached further down as well, and so there was water coming at several points at that time. I completely agree that the hole didn't help. As I said, there was a barrier put up, but that was swept away as well. It was part of the problem, but not the sole part of the problem. But obviously one of the things that Manx Utilities will be doing is working with other agencies, looking into it, learning any lessons. That's no consolation for the people who are involved. And if there is any responsibility in terms of Manx Utilities or our contractors, then I'm quite happy to take that responsibility.
Well, that responsibility then, we've already heard that many residents are going to be paying thousands of pounds worth of damage repairs, as well as struggling greatly, I'm sure, with trying to get more insurance schemes in place after such a sort of torrent history. Will you be offering, Manx Utilities that is, any compensation to people?
What Manx Utilities need to do is sit down with the other agencies involved, the other departments, and look at the main cause of this, which was torrential rain, which burst the banks at several areas. And one of the schemes that we were involved with was one of those areas involved. What we need to do is go back to lots of work that was done since the last flooding, which looked at the Laxey area, which is very challenging to actually reinforce. It would be an easy option to put up huge, great concrete walls along the riverbanks, but you're dealing with a heritage area. as Martin Perkins has already said, there is a heritage weir there, which was the main source of the problem. And in the past, Manx Utilities have approached Manx National Heritage about getting rid of that. It's a heritage site. People like the views. However, if you go down there today, you will see that weir caused a massive accumulation of trees. It caused a dam that then caused water to build up and burst the banks further up. We need to do some work there to attenuate it. But at the end of the day, when you're faced with this amount of water coming down through a very narrow valley so quickly, it will sweep things away. And that's what it did yesterday.
And just finally and quickly, with your government hat on rather than Manx Utilities, I suppose, we've seen such focus in government over sea defences. Should the river defences not be just as high on the priority list, if not more so, when we see events like these happen?
I absolutely agree with you. One of the things that happened after the last flooding was the Environment and Infrastructure Committee really looked at river flooding. Now, one of the good things that happened yesterday was along Peel Road. There were real worries about that flooding as well. Manx Utilities have done some extensive work in Westmoreland Road to build huge, great storage tanks to take this sort of rainwater and stop it flooding the road. That worked. We didn't have floods along Peel Road, so work has been done. And work needs to continue to be done, particularly in the Laxey area, because what we saw yesterday isn't just normal flooding. This is climate change in action. And these are the sort of warnings people have been giving, that those 1 in 100-year events actually are going to be happening far more frequently. So we need to be serious now about the work that's already been done in terms of rivers and streams, but also the finance and the money that's going to be needed to actually reinforce these areas and try to prevent flooding, but you're never going to stop flooding.